In a couple other of my videos, people have saw this old turd in the background and have mentioned that. So she's ugly, but I'll tell you about it. I've got a lot of projects, a lot of cars and trucks. Some of them in decent shape, some of them terrible. This one's probably falls somewhere in the middle of that. I've had this truck since 1998. I bought it for 450 bucks from a preacher in my mom and dad's old church. I got there about a day before another dude bought it and turned it into a trailer. The old man that owned it had taken it in as a payment for some kind of debt. I don't know. It was a trade deal and he had no use for it at all, and wanted to sell it, and another guy wanted to buy it, like I said, turn it into a trailer. And I'd mentioned wanting it for a long time. I'd looked at a couple of these trucks. I was 14, I think, at the time, and a 14-year-old don't have no money, and he agreed to take payments on it, which is hilarious for a $450 truck. And she was my pride and joy. I'll put a few pictures in it of what it looked like when I brought it home. Had a 360 two-barrel. It was pretty much shot. Had a 3 on the tree. No brakes, nothing like that. Power steering didn't work. It was a nightmare, but still a nightmare. When I got it, it was all like in the pictures, yellow and white. It's a 1973, like I already said, and I drove it to work in my early days of full-time employment. Worked at a tire shop then, and that old 360 in there, she just started running bad. It never ran good, and I thought it was 15 different things. You know, I cut the exhaust off right at the transmission, so it sounded like a pro stocker. It was funny. I did a lot of one-wheel tire fires. My high school shop class teacher let me bring the thing down there, and I did a bunch of super sketchy repairs. I was just trying to learn how to do body work. This was around probably 2000, 2001. I was a novice at best. I basically just rattle can bombed it and did some terrible Bondo work. This door here on this side used to be white. I primed the whole thing, had a different bed then. The bed was badly damaged. I did the best I could with it. And we did a bunch of burnouts right out in front of the school. Got in trouble a few times. But this bed came from a parts truck. It's in really good shape, with the exception of that little rust hole right there. It's pretty much it. It's a 77 bed, which has a fuel door. This truck from the factory did not. I've got a tailgate somewhere. This bed has the racetrack trim that kind of goes around the bottom, where the truck as built did not. This being an F-100, it was about the cheapest base model you could get. When I worked at the tire shop, a guy gave me this set of 15-inch wheels, so they're still on there. They clean up pretty good, but funny story, I was a big fan of Truckin' Magazine back before I even got my driver's license, and I liked the shaved door handle look, so I took the door handles off and I just bondoed this whole entire hole. No weld at all, just 3/4 inch thick, 1 inch thick. Bondoed that over, and then I re-rigged the door lock rod so that it opened with the key. I could turn the key and it opened the door. That's obviously long gone. But honestly, I'm thankful that I was broke as a kid, because this thing would have been a disaster. I wanted to a buddy of mine had, I think it was a square body of some kind. I wanted to take that entire front suspension and put it under this truck, have independent front, lowered. The fine restoration work and primer job continues in here. See, the wind has blown it all off, which is going to make it easier when I rebuild it. I rattle can bomb the interior black. Pretty terrible. And it's horrific, actually. I haven't painted the headliner. I did this in high school shop class, so don't bust my butt too bad. I thought I was tough then. Got a skull and crossbones there. This truck is about as base as you can get, like I said. It no AC, AM radio, nothing fancy, no wood grain. Until about 2 years ago, speedometer didn't work. I had no idea what mileage was on it. Seat needs recovered. Seat's all totally blown out, bad shape. I did have one of those cheap blanket seat covers on it for 2 decades. Let's see, what else can I tell you about it? Still got this door sticker. It's built in 72, and that's a 73. Shortly after I was driving it, to work every day, 360 finally gave up, as did the 3-speed. So I bought a 86 F-250 with the 351 Windsor C6. Got rid of the other clutch pedal, or the only clutch pedal. Put an automatic transmission pedal hanging assembly there. I rebuilt the motor in 2001. I think it was the second motor I'd rebuilt, and it runs like a champ even today. But before I had blown up the 360, I went out to go to work one day, and I put the thing in reverse, drove out in the street, and the gear shift jammed. The 3 on the tree setup. So I messed with it, and then it wouldn't go. Finally it broke. Wound up having to pop the hood, and one of my brothers had somehow or another managed to lodge an arrow in the shift linkage and broke it. So, using what looked like a claw hammer and a screwdriver, I chopped a hole in the floor and put a 3-speed universal floor shifter on it. But I had no idea what I was doing, so it wound up working a little bit, but the pattern was reversed, like reverse and first was over on the right, and second, third was on the left. But see that really nice patch I put on it 20 years ago. But anyways, it's an automatic trans on the column now. Runs great. I just drive it around. So here in a minute we'll take it on a test drive. So you have to excuse the dirt, the debris under here. The old girl runs pretty good. It looks like crap. Keep in mind, I did this when I was 17, 18 years old. So it's pretty much gone untouched in all that time, so it's not a representation of what I would build now, as far as quality and all that goes. But she's super reliable, runs well. 351 Windsor, like I already said. It's basically how it's been for the last 20 years. So I need to get a power washer, clean it all up, repaint the engine. But it's got years worth of dirt just sitting. She fires up every time I try to fire it up, and it runs cool, even without a shroud. I about took my finger off once, years and years ago, when I first started working on it. That metal fan with no flex on it's pretty unforgiving. That's the other part of having a shroud on there. It's a lot harder to stick your fingers in it. Got a little Nordsky's favorite flex hose there. I won't even show you the bottom hose, that's embarrassing. But she runs good. So my future plans with this truck is to build this into the cruiser, that I've been dreaming about for 20 years, since I was a teenager. this one's going to be real nice. So I'm not in any hurry really to get started on it. It's going to take a lot of work. It'll be torn down to bare frame, every last nut and bolt, even more so than that 76 that I'm building in the shop. I'm probably not going to do much lowering on it. Might lower the back a couple inches just to get it level. Really don't care for the slammed on the ground look, but I don't know. Big news is I want this to be something I can drive anywhere. It's probably going to get a Coyote swap. I'd love to put a supercharged engine in it, but probably a 2011, 2012 Mustang GT engine, you know, 400 plus horsepower right out of the box. Be great for this. Motor in it runs great, so I mean I could leave what's in there, leave that alone. I don't know. Let's fire this dude up and talk about it a little. Go for a cruise. It's nice and cold outside, but the heater works pretty good. Fire it up. Anyways, let's roll. So, other than it being my first truck, I got major sentimental attachments to this thing. Since it was never my daily driver, once I got out of, you know, got a real job doing electric work, driving all over the place, this wasn't the one I wanted to use for that. It pretty much just sat in the driveway. If I was hauling limbs or something, I would drive it, but for the most part, it sat all the time. So, continue the story. My uncle was huge into this body style, dent side, bump side trucks, and he had a gorgeous 78 Bronco that he was into four-wheeling, and really just wound up tearing the thing up. But it was broke most of the time, and he didn't have much money and was raising a family, and he wound up having to borrow this truck all the time on the regular. So he drove it a lot. He had bad back problems. One thing led to another, and he wound up passing away 7 to 8 years ago. He was only 42 or 43. He was a really good guy, and every time I jump in this thing, I almost can see him sitting over there in the other seat, you know. He just loved it. And then another buddy of mine that I worked with, a guy named Mark Willis, he was a construction dude with me. He had an old Dodge pickup that was always broke down, and a couple different times he borrowed it. He just loved it. He put a seat cover on it and kept it clean. And he wound up passing away a few years ago, and I don't know, I feel closer to him, you know, every time I jump in this old clunker. So I drove it, you know, in that manner, just kind of as a backup for quite some time. And then this guy I met at work, you know, there's lessons you learn the hard way. This dude I met at work seemed to be a real good guy, and honestly he probably was. He was having car troubles and had a family and all that. His daily broke. I was like, well, I got a truck sitting in my driveway, so you can just borrow that for a little while, for a week or so. And he was real appreciative of it. He borrowed it about a week into it. He's like, man, I haven't had the money to fix my car yet, but I borrow it for another week. It's like, yeah, sure, fine. Whatever, you know, this thing's paid off. I wasn't having to feed it or anything. So he had it another week, and then that week turned into a month. You know, I was going through a divorce at the time. It wasn't really way high on my priority list. And then the job I was on ended, and the guy stopped answering my phone calls. Now, I didn't know where he lived. I didn't know anything about him, you know. We weren't like good buddies or anything. tried to call him, he wouldn't answer, you know. I figured probably lost his phone, you know, something like that. Well, finally I got a deal in the mail that the license plate sticker was coming up due. It's like, well, I really need to find the truck at least so I can get a sticker on it. It's not illegal. Well, the guy still wasn't answering the phone calls, and he'd had it for probably 7-8 months at the time. So finally I just drove around South Tulsa, and I drove all around the apartment complexes. I found a piece of paper, I don't remember what it was, check stub or something, where he used to work, had his address on it, and I went by that apartment, and he'd moved, didn't live there no more. So I just searched around, drove through apartment complexes. Finally I found the old girl. She's sitting in the back lot of this apartment complex in a ghetto-y place. And I pull up to the thing, and the starter was laying on the ground underneath the truck. The bed had a mattress in it. The interior was full of cigarettes. There was a stolen sticker on the license plate. So old dude had apparently, battery had went bad, and he just kept jump starting over and over and over and over again until he burned up all the battery cables and the starter. So my brother was with me. We went home, bought some battery cables, bought a starter, drove back out there. Nobody was around. It's the middle of winter. I crawled under the truck, put some gas in it, I put the starter on it, new battery cables, got the old dude fired up, and it was running terrible. And I drove it to my parents' house a few miles from there. I mean, it certainly wasn't what you'd consider streetable. Some of the front suspension bushings on the trailing arms had gone out. It was just banging and slamming, and the front brake on one side was trying to lock up. I mean, it had never run that bad as long as I'd owned it. So I took it home and parked it in the barn for, wound up sitting 6 or 7 years, just basically abandoned on my own property, which was heartbreaking, but it's the way it worked out. I was trying to get a business off the ground, didn't have time to mess with it. But finally I pulled the old girl out and fixed the suspension problems, put all new calipers and hoses on it, new brakes, master cylinder, flushed the tank, put some fuel filters on it, got the thing where it'd run good. Still, these tires, they're pretty terrible, but I got a thing where I could run it, drive it again, get the tags up to date. So here for the last, oh yeah, I took that junky bed off, put this one from the parts truck on it. So for the last couple of years, I just drive it. It's my going to town rig. Heater works good. Heater core's plugged up in my daily truck. So I've driven it a bunch this week. But I just love it. Out of all the vehicles I own, this is probably the one I would sell last. And I'll probably be buried in this truck. But just wanted to let you see what this one's all about. She's uglier than homemade sand, but man, it's a good running truck. I sure like it. But anyways, I appreciate you following along.